Well, joining us to talk more about the president's proposals for tighter financial regulation is the dean of Columbia University's Graduate School of Business. He is Gleen Hubbard. And Hubbard also chaired the Council of Economic Advisors under the first President Bush. Now he co-chairs the Committee on Capital Markets Regulation, which last month released its own overhaul recommendation. And he joins us right now from Columbia's campus in New York. And Mr. Hubbard, thanks so much for being with us. Also, Peter Cook, by the way, in Washington, standing by as well for this interview. And Mr. Hubbard, let me start off with your recommendations from last month. Essentially, I don't want to generalize it too much, but you were calling for more of a consolidation in terms of the regulatory agencies. What we're hearing right now from the Obama administration seems a bit counter to that.
Well, yes, the Committee on Capital Markets Regulation, among many others, has called for consolidation. I think it's important first to give the administration credit for tackling in a rigorous way some very hard problems. But I do think they missed a big opportunity here. In fact, arguably what they're doing is going to add to complexity, not simplify it. We need regulatory consolidation, and the crisis warrants it.
And, you know, here, though, Professor, I mean, we've been talking a lot with the corporate leaders, you know, big CEOs from various companies. One thing that they do warn about is over-regulation, and that perhaps crimping the economic stimulus that we've put in place. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I think that is very important. The debate shouldn't be so much about more or less regulation, but getting the right regulation. And there, I think, you know, the administration focused wisely on changing capital requirements, but I think we'll have more effective, efficient regulation if we have an umbrella regulator in addition, of course, to the Federal Reserve.
Dean Hubbard, it's Peter Cook here at the White House. I want to ask you about those capital requirements, because it seems pretty clear that if you're an institution that's too big to fail, at least in the government's mind under this plan, you're going to face much tighter capital and liquidity requirements. You're essentially going to be incentivized to get smaller. What do you make of that? Are you concerned by that?
Well, I think there are two issues in capital requirements. One is to allow them to vary over time to make sure that they don't make cycles worse. And I don't know what the administration yet has done about that. The other is having larger institutions hold more capital. I think that does make sense because large institutions that are deemed too big to fail might have a funding advantage in markets. So I commend the administration.
And let me follow up on that. I know that you've worked on this issue with the committee for a while. And in fact, in past years, you all have, to some extent, called for, if you will, a lighter touch in terms of regulation, arguing that the U.S. was losing out to foreign competitors. Does this program in any way, do you think, risk the possibility that foreign capitals like London, Dubai might take advantage of this opportunity?
Well, I'm not quite so sure. I think the devil will lie in the details, and the administration is just now fleshing that out. More dangerous than this would be the salary interventions that the administration has suggested. I think broadly regulatory reform is a very good idea. As I said earlier, though, I think the administration punted on the big issue of consolidation.
Dean Hubbard,
it's Betty. Sorry, Peter. I just want to jump in, Dean Hubbard, because you mentioned earlier before about a super regulator and perhaps also in conjunction with the Fed. I mean, how would that work, essentially? I mean, we've talked about giving the Fed more regulatory powers, but how would that work between sort of a super regulator, an umbrella regulator, and also alongside the Fed?
Well, an umbrella regulator, say a financial services agency along the lines of the committee's recommendation, would really handle broadly most of what's currently financial regulation and investor protection. The Obama administration has a separate consumer protection agency. That's fine, or it could be part of this umbrella agency. The Fed would continue to be responsible for monetary policy and overall economic stability. And indeed, I would urge the administration to make sure that the resolution authority for the FDIC and the new supervisory authority for the Fed be granted for all institutions, not just so-called systemically important institutions.
Dean Hubbard, let me sneak in one last question. The argument here at the White House is that if you try and consolidate these regulatory agencies, you're going to run into political battles on the Hill. More important to get this rule making in place, these rule changes. What do you make of that argument?
Well, they're never $50 bills on the sidewalk. Good legislation is always hard, but we've had a big crisis. We need a reform, and they should pursue it.
Okay, Dean Hubbard, thank you so much. Gleen Hubbard, the Dean of Columbia University's Graduate School of Business, talking about the regulatory reforms in the financial sector. Okay.